Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the KFS pregame show. I am not GMAC. I am Sean W, stepping in for GMAC, who's feeling a little bit under the weather. So GMAC, get well soon. And I'm joined today by not by Mensa, but by one of the other fabulous members of the KFS team, XJ. How the hell are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to have you hosting tonight, Sean. I'm excited about this episode.
I'm excited too, because especially since at the end we're probably gonna throw feces at each other when we discuss the topic that we were talking about in our production meeting. And by production meeting, I mean the KFS
the DMs
group chat. Yeah, but we're here. So we're here. It is a Wednesday night. You're in Florida, right?
I am in Florida. Yeah. Don't dox me, but yeah, I'm out here somewhere.
Florida's a very big state, so I'll just leave it. I say that because it was a balmy 32 degrees as of right now, and the temperature continues to drop. So I envy you a lot.
I get to text my friends screenshots of the weather saying that's 77 degrees and breezy. So yeah.
You can go to hell. All right. So shout out to our first time listener, our first time viewers. Shout out to our last time viewers. And shout out to everyone in between. So before we jump into tonight's game against the Bulls, we'll take a few minutes to recap the last game against the Kings of Sacramento, which the Knicks won 112-99, and the score wasn't even that close. If you watch the game, we jumped on them off the rip, 36 points in the first quarter. 76 at halftime, and it was just no looking back, except for one part in the third quarter where someone decided to say the magic words, but we'll get to that in a second. But XJ, what were your thoughts on the game, the performance overall from the Knicks against the Kings?
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed. Like, they completely dominated the game throughout. They jumped on them early, took that big lead, and the most impressive part was that it never was in jeopardy. It never felt like they might lose it, might let go of the rope. Losing Julius, losing Brunson, like, it didn't seem to matter. They were just even keel the whole time. And that was really impressive to me. I actually, like you said, I'm in Florida, so I watched all the Knicks games on League Pass. And I actually popped over to the Kings broadcast, which actually they have a kind of a dope broadcast. They have Mark Jones doing their play-by-play. So it's like, it feels like a nationally televised game, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I popped over to it just to see what they were saying. And they're just like the whole time, like hoping the Kings can mount some kind of effort. They're like, all right, they made a three. And all they need to do is put a couple of those together. And it was like, nope, it never happened. So it was pretty cool to see it from that perspective, like the other side, like kind of rooting for the Kings to come back. And it was like the Knicks completely shut the door. So I loved watching it. I loved how they performed. I love that they out-rebound the Kings 55-41. We don't get to say that about the Knicks very often, completely dominating the boards like they did. Before I pass it back over to you for your thoughts, I want to just say this. I had one area of concern. And that concern was that the Kings went 10 of 39 from three. And you might say, oh, it's a positive thing. They went 10 of 39 from three. That's really good. We held them to 26% from three. I think that's what it was. But, even though we've talked about 3-point defense, like, has been improving, and we have better personnel like Deuce and Grimes playing a ton of minutes and subtle changes to the scheme, kind of taking a deeper look at the numbers makes me a little concerned about the sustainability of this run from the Knicks. So basically on the season, they're giving up 39 3-point attempts per game, right? And opponents are shooting about 34% on those attempts, which, it's already below league average, but that's okay. That's sustainable. But if you look at the 4 games of the winning streak, and I had these numbers, they're only giving up 34 attempts per game. That's awesome. But teams are shooting 22% on those 3-point attempts. There is no defense in the history of the league that can force teams to shoot 22% from three. It doesn't matter if you have Deuce McBride as 1 through 5, you're not forcing teams to shoot 22% from three. So that's absolutely going to change. It's not sustainable in the long term to expect teams to shoot 22% from three. But I think that there's a lot better contests. There's a lot better personnel scheme adjustments. But I don't think we're going to see teams shoot that low from three. So that's the one thing I think is going to turn around. Otherwise, I think every way that they're playing aside from that is totally sustainable. And I loved it in the Kings game.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that because I actually pulled up the stats of the Knicks before and after Tibbs went to the 9-man rotation. So for the first 23 games where Tibbs was playing between 10 and 14 guys, they had offensive rating of 113.9, defensive rating 115.7 for a net rating of negative 1.9. Since Tibbs went to the 9-man rotation, offensive rating 113.8, defensive rating 96.4, which is a net rating of 17.4. A 96.4 offensive rating will clearly be the best in the sport and probably the best in the history of the league, especially with a plus 17 net rating. So to your point, clearly they're not going to do that they're not going to do that, right?
No.
And you bring up a good point about the threes, because everyone knows the common knock that we heard from the national analysts in the We Hear season was that the three-point defense was not sustainable, that teams are just basically missing wide open. Teams were missing open three. I'm not going to say wide open, but they're missing more open threes than usual. I would say, so on one hand, yes, there's going to be some regression. But on the other hand, and I forget who I heard this from, but they said there's something about now that you have this lineup especially when you have this lineup, we need to think of a name for it. The IQ, Deuce, and Quickly lineup. There's something to be said that
IQ, Deuce, and Grimes.
Sorry, Grimes.
No, you're good. That's why we need a name for it.
We do need a name for it. I was thinking like GQ, but then what do I do about Deuce? And then it's like GQ squared. I don't know. But there's something to be said about, okay, you may get a three and you may be open, but in the back of your mind, someone is going to be flying to me in a second, whether it's Deuce or Quickly or Grimes. And I think someone else said that, like, even when you have it was Macri. Macri said that, like, hey, having Deuce in the lineup actually affects everyone's defense, including Randall. Because listen, if these dudes are flying around, you're gonna fly around too. So, like you said, the Kings shot 26% from three in that game, 10-39. The Knicks didn't shoot the Knicks only shot 8 of 35 from three in that game.
Yeah.
Which was we killed them everywhere else. Yeah. So that was that was the win. We'll take it. It's the fourth win in a row. As I said before, that's what we call where I come from. That's called a winning streak. And that brings us to tonight's game against the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Chicago Bulls, if I pull up their stats here, which was provided me by GMAC. So, Bulls, 11-15. That's good enough for 11th in the East, 7-5 at home. They've won 2 of their last 5. Now, the top 5 and bottom 5. Top 5 in defensive rating. They're 7th in defensive rating. Well, they can't be in the top 5 if they're 7th, but whatever. We'll give GMAC a lot, but
we'll throw them in there. It's fine.
3rd in free throw percentage, 1st in opponent offensive rebound percentage, 3rd in opponent steals per game, and 1st and 6th in opponent's turnovers. But then we go to bottom 5. They are 27 possessions, 27 3-pointers made, and 30 3-pointers attempted. That doesn't surprise me when you look at who their best player is, DeMar DeRozan, who's allergic to the 3-point line. And 27 possessions is interesting too, that they're clearly purposely slowing down the pace. And then we have Zach LaVine's numbers here, and we'll get to Mr. LaVine in just a second. But so in terms of this game, XJ, I'll say, what do you I believe, especially after seeing some of those stats, I will be actually I will be disappointed if the Knicks lost this game anyway, because I had the Bulls in the play-in at best, because last year they had a MVP caliber season from their best player, and they still had a negative point differential. So they were screaming for, like, all right, you're not going to sustain this. But I will be very disappointed if we lose, specifically because I'm looking at these offensive rebounding stats and these 3-point shooting stats, because we were terrible at 3-point defense until we turned into, the freaking, death lineup. And offensive rebounding has been an Achilles heel for us, but apparently they give that out in droves. So on a scale of 1 to we better effing win this game, how confident do you feel that we're going to win this game?
So I will say, I will definitely give you credit. I remember very early on in before the season, you called like the Bulls kind of falling way back down to the pack, and you were spot on with that. I thought they would do a little better. I didn't think they'd be like as good as they were last year, but they've really kind of fallen off. Just to clarify, I think the offensive rebounding stat actually says, when it says that they're first, I think it means that they give up the fewest offensive rebounds in the NBA, probably something like by percentage. So yeah, opponent
They
offensive rebound
probably
percentage.
do. Okay.
Yeah,
I
because
looked at that wrong.
So what's really interesting about the Bulls is that the last 4 games, the Knicks have been rebounding, like defensive rebounding the crap out of the ball. They've been doing amazing. Just like I said, they crushed the Kings on the boards. But during the last 4 games for the Bulls, they've been the number 1 defensive rebounding team in the NBA. They are absolutely crushing the boards, even more so than the Knicks. But yeah, I definitely think the Knicks should win this game. I'll just start by saying that they're not favored. They're kind of big underdogs, which is interesting. Everything I said about the 3-point shooting doesn't apply to the Bulls, because they take the fewest threes per game in the league by far, but would only take like 28.6 per game, and they only make 10 per game. So as much as the shooting regression that I was talking about as far as opponents' 3-point shooting, it's not going to catch up to the Knicks in this game, most likely this or the next game, because the Bulls don't shoot a lot of them. But the thing that the Bulls do have is that they basically play like a 90s style of basketball, which is what you just showed. Like very slow pace, not a ton of threes, secure defensive rebounds, play really elite defense. They're a top 4 defense in the NBA if you look at adjusted defensive rating, which takes into account strength of opponents' offenses. So they're really elite in terms of like mucking it up, playing tough, rebounding, playing hard defense, playing slow. So we're going to see all those things and see how the Knicks deal with that, which is basically they're playing kind of the style that the Grimes IQ Deuce defense plays, but like throughout the whole game. So I think it's going to be tougher than you might think, just based on some of those stats that we showed. But I do think the Knicks should win, even if Brunson doesn't play, which I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Absolutely. And that's actually a good segue to the next topic is Jalen Brunson. So I recently retweeted the photo from New York basketball, which showed from the Knicks holiday party, which showed a number of the Knicks and their wags. And for me, when looking at the picture, the takeaway from that picture was crystal clear. And it was the fact that Jalen Brunson is in a walking boot. I was actually in favor of Jalen not playing the Kings game, because I said if he doesn't play the Kings game, then he gets 5 days of rest between the Hornets game from last Friday and then tonight's game. But then again, we know who our head coach is. I am currently monitoring the starting lineup. Hasn't dropped yet, although the Knicks have revealed that we're in their statement jerseys tonight. So we'll probably find that out live on air. Should he play? Should Jalen Brunson? Okay, here's the question: will Jalen Brunson play tonight? And should he play tonight?
So I don't think he will. I think it's close. He might. Knowing Tibbs and knowing Brunson wants to play every game, no matter what. Do I think he should play? No, absolutely not. I think he should chill out for a little bit, see what this squad can do, let IQ get some starters minutes, and just like run with it and see how that goes with Deuce picking up a lot of slack. You could throw D-Rose in there if you want. I think it's okay. I think we can kind of stay afloat without Brunson. I think we could split 1 of 2 with the Bulls, basically, is what I'm saying. So I would rest him a couple games and just let him kind of really get his legs back under him. He was having a difficult shooting time the last couple games anyway. And a lot of that was it seems like he has some nagging injuries going on, and this just really exacerbated everything. So I think he needs to chill for a little bit. I feel pretty strongly about that. But is he going to? Knowing him and knowing Tibbs, I don't feel confident about it. Oh, you're still muted, but I can see you're agreeing.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So I was saying, I don't know if the chat is dropping fake news. Because I'm hearing so in the chat there's someone saying Grimes starting point guard, let's go. Sage is hilarious.
I don't think that's true.
So I'm with you. I don't think Brunson should play. I think if you let him take tonight off, then he gets then you could let him play Friday. He gets Monday, Tuesday. He gets 4 full days off. Will he play? Like it being in a walking boot yesterday and him playing today is kind of like because listen, the last time we saw him playing a walking boot, we didn't see him for 2 weeks minimum. That was Quentin Grimes. If so, let's say he doesn't play. You think that you would want to see IQ a point guard. Now,
I would want to, and they're not going to do it. No chance of it happening. I would love to see it, but zero. There's a better chance of Deuce starting and D-Rose starting over IQ, but I would want to see IQ start at point guard.
If it's not IQ, who do you think will be the starter? Rose or Deuce?
If I had to guess, honestly, I might say Rose just because of the respect level that Tibbs has for him coming back to Chicago. I think he would do him a solid and have him start. I don't think he's going to play like starters minutes. I think Deuce is going to get most of the minutes, but I can imagine D-Rose just starting the game as the nominal point guard, maybe running for the first like 5 minutes or so. And I think Tibbs would do it for him just being back in Chicago. I could really see it.
That's actually a good call out. Like start him, but he'll probably play like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Although it brings up the whole situation of like, he's out the rotation, so you bring him back into the rotation for a game, and then you take him back out. Do you want to yank them? You want to yank him around like that? We'll see. Again, I am actively refreshing the Knicks Knicks Twitter handle to see if that news comes out. That hopefully they will announce that while we're live on the air, and don't wait until afterward. Okay,
don't wait until we're done.
Yes. So you brought up a good point about starting Rose because of games in Chicago. There's another player in Chicago that has been the subject of many discussion within the Knicks community, and that is one Zach LaVine. So basically, this all started when Woj decided to throw a chair during the pregame during the Hawks game, and said that Zach basically said the Knicks are monitoring. Watch out for the Knicks to monitor the Zach LaVine situation. So, of course, Knicks Nation got into a tizzy and started, debating what he will look like, if it made sense, if it didn't make sense. And I will just take a page out of the book of take a piece of advice from Fred Katz and say, do not worry about trades that haven't happened yet. With that being said, I will go first. I do not want Zach LaVine anywhere near this roster. Not that I don't think he's a good player, but if his knee, like Benji said, you don't manage injuries in game one. If his knee acts up and becomes worse, then he might be the worst contract in basketball. And yes, 50, 40, 90 Zach LaVine, I would want on my team. But again, we can pull up the stats. Where is the stats? So this season, he's 43, 35, and 82. It's not what you want. So I don't want this guy on my team. Not that I don't think he's a good player, but at the money And obviously, he's gonna start at the 2. So what happened? You sticking Grimes to the bench, what have you. So I don't want this guy on my team. Again, he's not a good player, but at that price point, I just can't do it. What are your thoughts on Zach LaVine possibly in orange and blue?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with you. I might disagree in some spaces, but I want to preface by saying I don't think he's likely to come to New York. I think maybe monitoring the situation means just like seeing if Chicago's giving him away. Because to me, it really comes down to his health, like you kind of indicated about the knee. Would I buy low on him and take a flyer? Like, yeah, like depending on what the price is. Like, if the price is like rock bottom, I think you could take a chance on him. He's had a couple of top 20 player seasons, and I think that's easy to forget. Like he legitimately was a top 20 player in 2020 and in
Absolutely.
2021. But this year he's been awful. He's just been awful. And I think this could easily, I'm a Yankees fan, and if you're a Yankees fan, I think this could be easily like a Jacoby Ellsbury situation where the guy has a couple of amazing seasons and then just never does it again, and then is just injured constantly, and then he just retires. Like I could absolutely see that being the way that his career goes. So yeah, I mean, I'd buy like super, super low on him, and maybe that's what the Knicks are monitoring. But if it's any like substantial price, like a bunch of unprotected firsts or anything like that, like no, I'm out. I agree with you.
Oh, and that's exactly what it will be, because the Bulls are trying to recoup their draft capital from one horrendous trade in particular, just looks worse by the day. Traded for
Vucevic, yeah,
so traded for Nikola Vucevic, aka Vucci Man. And the Bulls they do not own their pick. It is top 4 protected. So listen, if you think, I'll say this. People like to say the Knicks are stuck and they're in purgatory. Okay, there's a difference between being in purgatory and being stuck in purgatory. Right now, the Knicks are in purgatory, but they're not stuck in purgatory. And I'm going to give a shout out to my man Chris Barnett, aka Hoop Spaces, who tried to push back on me during his show. I was like, I don't know. I was like, no. Like, where's the monstrous contract that we'd have to like attach picks to? Like, the worst contract on our books right now is Evan Fournier, and he's an expiring in 6 months. Like, the Knicks can pivot anytime they want to. For the Bulls to pivot, that literally requires them to blow it up. And my theory has always been the reason why the Lakers have not traded their picks, because they're waiting for the Bulls to accept, look in the mirror, accept reality, and say, all right, you can have Vucci Man and DeMar DeRozan. Give us those 2 first-round picks. So they are stuck. We are not stuck. Please keep that in mind. I was looking at the chat. Someone in the chat said, yes, D's World of Hoops. It's called the rumor mill for a reason. Exactly. I say this all the time. If you hear a rumor about a trade, free agent signing, someone getting fired, someone getting hired, whatever, in sports, source, when you hear, shout out to Doug and Ryan Stewart, who made up the Source Brothers, anonymous source, unattributed source, whatever. When you hear a rumor or report like that, think about who it benefits, because that's where it came from. So like when I see Woj dropping this, it's like, oh, the Knicks, the Knicks are monitored. Watch out for the Knicks when it comes to Zach LaVine. And I'm like, wait a minute. And everyone's like, oh, see, the Knicks, because he's CAA, the Knicks are talking to, like, okay, they may have done their due diligence, which every team should do, but that doesn't benefit the Knicks for this news to be out. So you know who does benefit? Chicago, because we all know everyone likes to use our franchise to drive up the damn price. So please keep that in mind.
I just want to say I love what you said
Yes.
about the Knicks being in purgatory but not being stuck in purgatory. I think that's so eloquent, because it's totally true. We are in purgatory currently. We're like the most middling of all middling teams in the NBA. If you look at adjusted net rating, I think they're like a 0, like a plus minus nothing, and then they're like 15th in the NBA, like the most middling team ever. But there's a lot of moves that they can make. There's a lot of ways they can go. They could pivot left or right. They could, go over the cap, go under the cap, move some deals, go younger, compete now, trade for a star. There's so many options that they have. they're not stuck. The Bulls are stuck, and I'm glad to not be a Bulls fan.
Yes. And I want to give a big shout out to, there was this Bulls fan last year. I'm not going to say her Twitter name because I'm not trying to give her any pub, but she spent the entire season last year tweeting about the Knicks. The entire, like, if you looked, if you, I'll after the show, I'll send you her at, and all the time, Knicks to this, Knicks that, Knicks this, Knicks that. Meanwhile, now you went all in on a team that made the play-in. Okay, so according to the Knicks Twitter feed, Jalen Brunson, contused right foot, is available to play.
Wow. Hopefully available doesn't mean he's going to, but he's probably going to start if that's the case.
He better be situational. He better be situational.
I don't know.
But, especially for a team that's like, we don't have championship aspirations this year, so why risk it? Because again, we're not stuck. The Bulls are stuck. The Timberwolves are stuck. Low key,
that's another one.
Low key, the Hawks are stuck.
I don't know their pick situation, but their contract situation is not looking good.
Yeah, because the thing is, once you make that move, once you trade, I say this, you get one shot when it comes to trading your draft capital. Because once you do that, your margins become very, very thin. So, with the Hawks, and we're only going to spend too much time on the Hawks, but all right, what's the next move? How do they, because I say they need a wing. How are they getting the wing? What are they going to trade? Okongwu? You don't want to trade Okongwu.
I have no answers for you.
Yeah. So, so Sage and Knicks pad. I'm looking at this chat. I'll put it up here. He says, Knicks aren't in no man's land. Blazers, Bulls, Wolves, Sixers, Miami are in no man's land. They got no assets to improve the team and can't contend. So I agree with the Blazers because the Blazers ain't win the title and they seem to be stuck. Bulls we discussed, Wolves we discussed, Sixers. Well, see, the Sixers have an MVP candidate, so they should get to the second round. And if things go to I'm a big Joel Embiid supporter, so I believe that he could be the best player on the championship team, so he can pull. So yes, they're stuck, but they're stuck in we believe we can win the title. That's where I want to be.
As long as Embiid is healthy, they're okay.
That's another interesting one, Miami, because now I don't know what their draft capital looks like, but I know Pat Riley doesn't care about first round picks, so he'll trade them to bring in a guy. I guess that's why you're hearing about Julius, but yeah, they have a lot of wiggle room because you can only depend on undrafted free agents, but for so long, right? So there we go. So all right, so it looks like Brunson's gonna play. I mean, that's Tibbs' boy, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna freaking play a lot of minutes. So with that, we can now get into our the best gambling segment. Yes, the best gambling segment on Knicks Twitter today, and that is betting and sweating. While I pull up, I'm gonna do this really quick. Download the WynnBet app or visit www.wynnbet.com to start winning. Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100, win $100. Download, bet, win. All right. So because I'm also producing while I host, so while I bring this up, while I bring up the betting and sweating board, I will ask you, Mr. XJ, to give us what you think. Give us your betting and sweating pick for tonight.
Yeah, and I just want to say you're doing an impressive job at playing the GMAC role and the Sean with the W role, by the way, which I'm thankful to not be doing. you're killing it.
I appreciate it.
Two things I wanted to say. Yeah, I just wanted to call out Kevin Danishevsky in the chat reminded me that the Hawks traded 2 unprotected firsts in the Murray deal. So, yep, they're in purgatory. Forgot about that. I don't know how that slipped my mind. And then as far as tonight, I think tonight's a tough call as far as the game lines. The game lines have been fluctuating all over the place. It was +5 for the Knicks, before Brunson was announced as a starter.
Mhm.
So apparently the odds makers think that Brunson is the Knicks, which he may be more or less. But I think they're kind of betting that Randall won't keep up his hot play offensively, and the threes are going to start dropping. And I don't know that Brunson's like going to be super healthy, so I don't know if he's worth 2.5 points there. He's also going to be guarded by Caruso a lot of the night, who, if people are sleeping on Caruso is probably the best defensive guard in the NBA right now. So that's going to be a tough matchup for Brunson. He doesn't have too many tough matchups. He can kind of bully whoever he wants, but Caruso is going to be tough. But so all of this I think is going to happen, but not enough for the Bulls to win. I do think the Knicks are still going to pull it off. I think their defense is going to hold. I don't think the Bulls can score enough unless LaVine has like a throwback night, which I don't anticipate seeing against Grimes. So I think the Knicks are going to win. I don't want to do like money line. I would want to take the points just to be safe. So I am going to go Knicks the plus 2.5 at the minus 110.
All right. So Knicks plus 2.5 at minus 110. All right. So going to the other members of the pregame show. So Mensa, and I had this right here. Mensa is going with Knicks first half money line, and he says this is going to be a lock. All right, so we'll see. First half minus 115. I mean, excuse me, plus 115.
That's nice.
That's nice. That is very nice. All right. GMAC from his sick bed has given us. He is going back to the Randall train, and he is picking Julius Randle over 40 points, rebounds, and assists. Let me just double check to make sure that it's here. Where is Mr. Randall? He is all the way down here. Yes, 40 points, rebounds, and assists at plus 135. I'm going to zoom out a bit on here so you all can see.
I'm thinking that GMAC picked that expecting Brunson not to play. I got to say.
That's
a good call. I don't know if that's true or not, but.
But then again, are they still – I wonder if they're still starting DeMar at the 4. Because if they are, Randall's gonna cook him.
That's a brutal matchup for DeMar if he's guarding Randall. Yeah,
it's an absolutely brutal matchup. All right, so for my pick, I actually was thinking about taking Mitchell Robinson over rebounds, but that was when I had misread the top 5 and saw that they're really good at the preventing offensive rebounds. So I was looking at it. And then I think also Vucci Man kind of gives him fits because Vucci is a perimeter guy, will hang out in the perimeter. Maybe Mitch has to go out there and guard him. So you know what I'm doing? I'm going back to the well. And what's the well? The well is Knicks first quarter. Because according to my good friend Tom Bassine, he says that where I just had it in front of me. Where did it go? Here we go. Yes, according to my good friend Tom Bassine, the Knicks have a first quarter net rating of positive 6.3, and the Chicago Bulls have a first quarter net rating of -7. So, with that being said, I am going, and look, I can get plus odds. So I'm going first quarter money line at plus 110. So here are our betting and sweating picks for tonight. So you can go and put this money in. Zooming in like that didn't make any damn sense. So we have first we all picked all Knicks. So that's good.
All Knicks lines, yep.
Also all Knicks lines. So we have you pick, so XJ is the Knicks getting 2.5 point spread overall for the game. Mensa is going Knicks first half money line at plus 115. GMAC is going Knicks. Julius Randle over 40 plus points, rebounds, and assists at now it's minus 120. Son of a bitch. And I'm going again with the Knicks first quarter money line at plus 110. So if you were to parlay that parlay is plus 1796. So a $100 bet will yield you $449 again. And so that is that is betting and sweating for tonight. And again, I must read the message because I have to. I'm required by law. Download the WynnBet app or please visit www.wynnbet.com to start winning. Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100, win $100. Download, bet, win. All right. So we got about 23 minutes before game time. The starting lineup. Well, the Knicks themselves have not announced the starting lineup as of yet. Although there's probably one somewhere. I'm sure someone in the chat will if you see the starting lineup, please confirm it. Any final thoughts about tonight's game before we get into our death match afterward?
Well, my final thought was going to be that I was excited to see how many minutes IQ would play with Brunson out, but that is going out the window. Yeah, I think that RJ needs to have a good game for them to win this one. I think they can't like rely on Brunson at this point. I think he's going to be a little hobbled, and like I said, Caruso is playing, and Caruso is completely one of the best lockdown defenders in the NBA. So I think RJ is going to have a solid game. I'm really excited to see how he looks. He's been performing a lot better. We're seeing some more regression for RJ in terms of to his career averages, which aren't the best, but they're better than he had been before. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing how RJ performs.
Same here. It seems like he's kind of figured it out. Or whatever. Like my theory was that like he was pressing because he had to show everyone that, you shouldn't have traded me to Utah. I'm the franchise. I'm the cornerstone. I'm going to show you. I'm going to score. I'm going to get my 20 points a game. And listen, as a 22-year-old kid, he just turned 23, I believe. Like that's hard. Like I remember when I was 22, if someone at my job told me like, I heard rumors that they didn't want me around anymore, I'd feel the same way, and I'd absolutely try to I'm going to show you. So I said on an earlier pregame show that I think he's Mark Teixeira because Mark Teixeira used to bat 187 every April on like $168 million contract, but he helped us win the World Series. So yeah, I can't even get mad. I can't even get mad at him. All right. There was one of these things in the chat. Shout out to everyone in the chat.
The chat's been popping. I love it.
Chat's been popping. I'm gonna post this one really quickly from Blood of the Panther. He says, I'm shocked Sean hasn't mentioned shaking ass at least once this stream. Yo,
somebody's been listening to Sean in the Twitter Spaces.
Has taken over Knicks Twitter, especially the Knicks Spaces. That is the term of 2022. Listen, when it comes to shaking ass, there is one player that players shake ass for. I'm not going to mention his name, but just know that he's a future Hall of Famer. And he's came here from Atlanta. So, all right, so we have some time. So the last time XJ and I were on the pregame show together, we started talking about tanking. And he has a different mindset from me than I do. And the one thing he talked about how the OKC, Paul George, the OKC trading Paul George to LA to the Clippers is what started their tanking process. I would push back on that, but I would like you to elaborate really quickly. Actually, take as long as you want. We got 19 minutes. What is your stance on tanking? Do you embrace it? Do you accept it? Do you hate it? And do you think this is something that could happen in New York or should happen in New York?
I think that tanking, when done in a really well thought out way with a really smart front office, is a totally efficient and effective way to turn your team from a bad or middling team into a contending team over the course of 3 to 4 years. We have seen this work over and over again. We have seen it work so effectively that the NBA has continued to change the lottery odds to prevent teams from doing it because it's such an effective strategy that they're trying to like mitigate how good it works. And they've done so to some extent, but not to the extent that it doesn't work anymore. We talk about the lottery being the NBA lottery, draft lottery being a crapshoot, and to some extent it is, but you definitely see a higher rate of success the earlier that teams draft. And so me being like a numbers data guy, like I'm going to look at the probabilities of hitting on a transcendent superstar player. And those probabilities are dramatically higher in the top 5. And the more often you can get into the top 5, the better chance you have on hitting on one of those players. And once you hit on one of those players, everything else kind of falls into place around that. So I think tanking is absolutely an effective way to turn your team into, like I said, from like middling or a lower end team into a competitor in about 3 to 4 years. The thing with OKC is my point is not so much like whether trading Paul George and getting a package that included SGA was about like started their tanking process or like is like emblematic of their tanking. Like it's more about that's the kind of deal that you would make if you're tanking. And those are the kinds of ways that you can get star players, not just through the draft, but you're going to take a flyer on a young player. You're going to get a bunch of young players and you're going to see who hits, who's really good. It's just about, to me, it's about volume. The more young potential that you have on your team, the more likely you are to hit on one that's going to be really, really good. And you don't know which one that's going to be all the time because some of that is a crapshoot. It's really hard to project in the future. It's really hard to understand, like, based on a guy's skill set at 19 years old, what he's going to be when he's 24 and entering his prime at 26. But I just think it's about probabilities and increasing your chances to do it. And so that's why I'm generally a fan of tanking.
So something you said there that struck a chord with me. It was the word crapshoot. And the other thing that you said was that, you got to take multiple chances, right? Like you want to take as many bites at the apple as possible, which was basically the basis of everything Sam Hinkie did. It's like to keep taking as much swings as you can until you hit that home run. I would not be against. I'm not going to say that I'm against tanking because as long like the league gives you a incentive to tank. Like it says, the worse you are, the higher your pick is. Now, yes, although they've changed the lottery odds a bit, so basically the top 4 is flat, and they all have a 14% chance. Like it's socialism at its best, right? My thing is, I feel as if there are people who believe. I'm not saying that you're saying this, but act that tanking is foolproof in the sense that like. If the Knicks, like for example, there's a lot of people think the Knicks should tank this year. So it's like the Knicks should tank. They're going to go into the draft. They're going to get a superstar, and then you're good. My thing is, all right, let's say, and I gave this example on the Twitter on Who Spaces yesterday, actually. Let's say the Knicks get the number 2 pick. Let's say the Knicks decide, you know what, we're going to tank. We're going to tank, and they finish like the 7th worst record, and the lottery gods shine on them, and they get the number 2 pick in the draft. And then they pick the equivalent of D'Angelo Russell. Let's say Scoot Henderson is D'Angelo Russell, right? And I'm not saying that he is going to be because I haven't followed, like everyone says he's great. But then again, I've heard a lot of players, like I was told, Markelle Fultz was going to be that dude and whatever. So the reason why I use D'Angelo Russell is because D'Angelo Russell, he is good enough for you to think that you may have a guy. But he's not good enough to actually be that guy. But because he's good enough, and listen, D'Angelo Russell's made an all-star team. So he by no means is he a bum. You're now going to spend 3 years trying to convince yourself that this dude is the guy. Why? Because you literally flushed the entire season down the drain. And even if you figure out he's not that guy after 2 years, let's say, which doesn't happen. Usually you take the whole 4 years, you figure it out. Now you got to start over. And now you got to go back into the well. And you got to tank again. And you need to be 17 and 63 again. And you have to get another guy. And the reason I bring this up is because I do not know if the tanking people are mentally prepared for like how much bad fucking basketball you're gonna have to deal with potentially to get a guy. So think about this. And I'll go to you to respond, and you can throw shit at me. Like the Magic. The Magic traded Dwight Howard in 2013, 2012, 2013 season, I believe. And then since then, they drafted in the first round Victor Oladipo, Aaron Gordon, Mario Hezonja, Domantas Sabonis, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Bamba, Chuma Okeke, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, and now Paolo Banchero. I ran off a number of good players. Pre-injury Oladipo is a good player. Sabonis is an all-star. Aaron Gordon, good player, but never that guy. And it took them 9 years to find. Now people may think that Banchero was that guy. It took them 9 freaking years. And it wasn't even that they were tanking. It's like, and the funny thing is, I don't think they tanked. It was like, no, we're trying to be good with these guys. Oh, they stink. Let's start over. Oh, let's be good. Oh, we're not good. Let's start over. Like, I don't think that can happen in New York. I don't think a New York, and I don't think the process. I think the process lasted 5 years. It was a minimum of 3. I don't know if they could do that. I don't know so that's why I say there is an opportunity cost to tanking. There is a human element that you have to deal with that I think the 76ers are still dealing of. So what do you say to the people? What do you say to that where I say there's a human cost to it that may not necessarily be worth it? Because if you don't get that guy right away, you could really be screwed.
So I say that I am not a human. I am an artificial intelligence. I don't have any emotions. I'm going to take 4 years and I'm going to try to give myself the best probability of creating a title contender, right? Like I'm being facetious, obviously. Yes, you have to take into consideration your fan base and can they stomach it and can the ownership stomach it and all of that stuff. And a lot of times maybe it's not feasible. It takes like someone to come in like Sam Hinkie and convince the ownership like this is something we can do. This is the best way forward. This is going to get us out of this like middle ground that we've been in for decades or many years. So it's difficult. I'm not saying that it's easy, but what I'm trying to explain is that in my perspective, I'm all about probabilities, right? I'm all about what's going to give me the best opportunity to create a title contender. We can definitely point out bad players who were picked early. We can point out MVP level players, generational talents who were picked late in the first and the second round. We can definitely point out all of those examples. Mm-hmm. It's not about the fact that whether those players exist or whether you can build a title contender without tanking. All of those things are true. I'm saying I'm starting from scratch. I'm coming in, I'm running a front office. I want to have a title contender in 4 years. What probabilistically gives me the best chance to create that, to generate that from nothing? My answer to that is tanking. Yes, I cannot tank. I can just be middling. I can draft 13 and pick a superstar and pick Steph Curry at 9 and everything works out great.
Steph
of course,
Curry at 7,
can
Giannis at 15.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things can happen. You could get Jokic in the second round. All of those things can happen for sure. But I'm saying if I'm going to take the most efficient and effective way possible, starting from scratch and saying I want to give myself the best odds, the best chances to create a title contending team, this is the route that I think is most effective from scratch without all of this luck and randomness that is interjected. Of course, all those things can happen. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm not discounting them. I'm not saying that this is the only way to create a title contender. The Knicks are trying a really interesting way right now with this like trying to be competitive while still generating assets, while trying to trade for a star. Like that's a different route than I think we've seen in the past. And I'm interested to see how that works. Do I think that that's the most effective and efficient way to do it? No. Do I think it can work? Yes. I think a lot of different routes to title contention can work. What do I think is probabilistically the most likely? I think it is tanking. That's my point. It's not that tanking's the end all be all. You can't get a title contender any other way. None of those things is what I would argue, basically, just to clarify what my position is.
No, it makes sense. Really quick, we do have a super chat. I want to get to the super chat, which actually doesn't have anything to do with tanking, but it's from Blanco Smoke. Thank you for your generous contribution. I'm from Cali, so my Knicks info isn't all that accurate. How actively are they shopping D Rose? So I don't really have sources, but from what I've heard from those in the know is that Rose is available, but as we've come to realize, they're available at the price the Knicks want. So the Knicks will listen. The Knicks, I put it to you like this: if you call about Derrick Rose, they're not going to hang up the phone, right? Now, the price point that they may have attached to Mr. Rose, maybe they're asking for a first, maybe they're asking for a protected first, whether it's slightly protected, heavily protected. Maybe they're asking for salary. Maybe they're asking for a young player. That I do not know. But listen, this front office showed you, that if it's the right deal, they'll make it. RJ Barrett was halfway to Utah this summer, so no one is safe. So they're shopping, so he's available. Oh, listen, all these players are available for the right deal. All of them. Randall, Rose, Fournier, RJ, Obi, IQ, they're all available for the right deal. And your thoughts, XJ, on on Rose and anyone on this roster being available?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. D Rose is on a team option deal for next year. So for all intents and purposes, he's an expiring contract. There's value around the league for expiring contracts. I think D Rose could have some value on the market for somebody like LA. He's not playing here, and I kind of think, just like out of respect for him, like that they are looking to move him more so than that they need to get him off the roster or anything like that. Like I'm sure he wants to play. He's 34 years old, a former MVP. I know Tibbs and him have an amazing relationship. The whole organization has and the whole league has a ton of respect for D Rose. It's not working out here. You know, we have Deuce and we have guys that we want to get minutes and get a look at ahead of him. And so, again, he's on essentially an expiring contract. I think all those factors contribute to the Knicks wanting to move on from him or potentially get a second round pick or something, some kind of value back for him. I don't think it's because he's bad and he's like, we need to get him off the team or anything. I think it hasn't worked out here. At least this year. It has in the past. And so, yeah, I don't think they're like actively, desperately trying to get him off the roster, but I think they'll move him if they could get some value back for him.
Agreed. Yeah. And like I've said all the time, this front office values value more than most. So we'll see. Back to the 10 conversation. We actually have two comments I want to put up here. They're interesting. This is one from Dirty Dancer. The flattened lottery odds should encourage teams that are playing to tank more honestly. That I agree with. I always believe that was the unintended consequence of the flattened lottery odds. We saw Portland do it last year. After a while, they're like, F this. And they became the worst team known to men, and they got into the lottery, and they got a guy. They got Shaded Sharp, and maybe the guy, maybe he'll pop for them, right? So yeah, I think you'll see. Listen, like I said, Chicago, Washington. Who else? Let me look at I got the standings right here. Like Chicago, Washington, Indiana's gonna have a decision to make real soon. And I think the decision's starting to be made for them because Indiana basically had like a really easy schedule and they still have been outscored. They have a negative point differential. So I think it's time's up for them. The Lakers can't do anything because they don't have their pick. Minnesota, I don't think they have their pick.
Minnesota probably has no picks.
So yeah, I definitely think you'll see more of that. And then Menno F says, I get Sean's point, but there's risk to every aspect of trade build. So I'm assuming he means team building here.
Yeah.
It's never a surefire guarantee regardless of which path you choose. I agree with you 1,000%, Menno. There is no surefire way to build a basketball team. What I say is that there are certain people, like what the Knicks are doing now is no surefire way, because literally if no one acts out, then, what's going to happen? There are certain people who believe that, like, oh, it's just tank. And I'm just like, well, that's a crapshoot. Like somebody said on Twitter the other day that Scoot Henderson's better than any Knick guard on the roster right now. And I'm like, can we settle down? Like, there's so many players who are can't miss that. Like, who was a can't miss prospect? Ben Simmons. I was told that he was the best prospect since LeBron. And so I would just say that, like, listen, whether it's, and even like free agency, because like you can clear cap space, but you may not get the guy, right? So yes, listen, none of this is foolproof. And that's why I give the front office some grace in the way they're going about it, because there's no surefire way. Like when you hit, and then you are smutty, right? When you get the guy. And Knicks clearly don't have that guy. But
Sean, let me ask you a question.
yes.
So do you think that you're more likely to get a star or superstar player in the top 5 of the draft or after that?
Do you I mean, the statistics, there's a website that shows like the expected output of a player by
Yes,
pick.
exactly.
And yes, it is harder to do it the farther away you get from one. So I absolutely
that's all that
agree
tanking is. But that's all that tanking. All that tanking is it takes that chart that you're talking about and says, here's the expected return at each of these draft slots. And it says, I'm going to try to get into the highest one to get the highest expected return. Like that's all that tanking is. That's the whole idea behind it. And so mathematically, it makes sense. And I just like, would you argue that it's just like a bad? I could understand not wanting to do it because of all the kind of what like externalities that you talked about. Like you have to deal with like your fan base and you have to deal with watching bad basketball and it's like frustrating and like I totally get those things, and that might be like I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather just try to compete and hope I hit on somebody later in the draft. But would you argue that tanking it just doesn't work? You think it's just a bad strategy flat out?
I don't think it's a bad strategy, but I think that there is a human element and a human cost to it. So I bring up so the funny thing, I'll say this: when it comes to like tanking, which is to me is like, okay, we are not trying to win because we're trying to maximize ping pong balls. Less teams do it than you think, and
it's rare,
and especially from jump. Like Portland did it last year, like after the All-Star break. I believe that Knicks should have did it last year after they lost to the Nets. They was like, okay, this is not going anywhere. But to go in from day one and say we are not trying to win everything, there is an opportunity cost to it. And again, if you don't hit on the guy, if you don't hit on the guy,
ideally you'll have multiple opportunities to hit on the guy, which is what Philly did, right? Philly had multiple chances. They missed like 5 times, but they hit on Embiid, and that's all that matters. You don't have to be good. You just got to hit that one. And if you hit 2, then now you're an elite title contender. But if you hit 1, you're Philadelphia, which is not, I mean,
and Philadelphia has not made a conference final.
Yeah, but what have the Knicks done? What have the Knicks done?
But you know what? I talked to I got a lot of Sixers fan friends, and they're like they're already like blow it up and start over. Like I had people say they'll blow up the thing, like
trade Embiid.
Well, last year they were like, yeah, they're like blow it up, and I was like, so you want to go like. So to me, it's like you are right. Mathematically, it makes sense. Like you can't argue with the math. It's just that, again, if you don't get the guy right, then you got to go back into the well again. And honestly, and I'll say this, and we can wrap up here.
Yeah.
I don't believe the owner of this franchise has a stomach for it. And I don't believe the owner of any franchise in the city of New York has a stomach for it. I don't think Joe Tsai would tank. I don't think the Lakers would tank. I don't think Steve Ballmer would tank. I don't think Boston would tank. Now, I could be wrong, but it's just that, like you know what it is? It's a result. It's a results oriented business. So if you tank and you get the guys, like, hey, I got the guy, so you can right. But
you have to have buy-in from your ownership for like you have to say as the front office, as the president, you have to go there and say, listen, I need 5 solid years. It's going to be a rough 5 years. I can't promise anything within these 5 years, but you got to give me that amount of time. If they don't do that, you can't tank. You should forget about it. Yeah, at that point, it doesn't make sense. If you're going to try to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out and tanking, then you shouldn't do it at all. But Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing, and you got to sell the organization on it. I've seen some quotes about tanking from a couple of guys in front office guys in other sports leagues, and it's all about getting buy-in from the ownership. And if they're not
Yes.
bought in, then forget about it.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, like, in Philly, ownership bought in, and then they did it. They it's like
Yes,
tanking is
exactly.
it's like a roller coaster. It's really scary going up the roller coaster, and at some point, usually the owner says, "I want off," and
Yep,
then there we go.
that's totally true.
Yeah. All right. So that's all for today. Thanks for everyone who pulled up. The chat was very active. Appreciate
Love the
it.
chat today.
Love the chat as always. Join us here afterwards. I still have this WynnBet thing up here. Let me move that out the way. Join us afterward for John will be running the post-game show. And enjoy the game today. And that's basically it. Last thing I'll say, I'm wearing this hat to commemorate Syracuse men's soccer winning the national championship on penalties on Monday night over Indiana. So shout out to Cuse Nation, shout out to Syracuse, shout out to the men's soccer team, national champions. I'm getting a t-shirt. So for XJ, I'm Sean for W. Thanks for watching. Knicks Nation, let's ride. Go Orange!